Welcome to another soothing journey through history. Tonight, we're stepping into the quiet, candlelit world of a medieval scriptorium in the 12th century. A place of endless quills, parchment, and the slow, steady work of a scribe named Brother Eadric. Imagine spending your day hunched over a desk, copying ancient texts by hand, with nothing but the flicker of a candle and the occasional squeak of a mouse to keep you company. We'll follow Eadric through his surprisingly dull yet oddly fascinating day, exploring the art of medieval bookmaking, the challenges of monastic life, and the quiet legacy of those who preserved knowledge in a dark age. If you're ready to trade your modern comforts for a peek into this ancient routine, settle in, dim the lights, and maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum. Oh, and if you enjoy this journey, give the video a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, let's turn the page and step into the past. It's just before dawn in the year 1150, and your Brother Eadric, a monk and scribe living in a Benedictine monastery in northern England. You wake to the sound of the morning bell, its deep clang echoing through the stone corridors of the monastery, a signal for the first prayers of the day. Lauds. Your cell is a tiny room, barely big enough for a straw bed, a wooden stool, and a small table. The walls are cold stone, and the air is so chilly you can see your breath, like tiny clouds in the dim light filtering through a narrow window. Your bed is a simple straw mat, covered with a scratchy wool blanket. And let's just say the fleas have decided you're their personal buffet. You roll out of bed, your joints creaking from the cold, and kneel on the icy floor to say a quick prayer. "Give me strength for another day of quills and parchment," you mutter, hoping for a miracle to make the scriptorium a little warmer today. You pull on your gray monastic robe, the rough wool itching against your skin, and slip into a pair of worn leather sandals. Breakfast isn't a thing yet. Monks like you eat only twice a day, and the first meal won't come until after morning prayers. Your stomach grumbles, but you ignore it. Grabbing your rosary beads and heading out into the cloister. The monastery is quiet except for the shuffle of other monks' sandals as they make their way to the chapel. The air smells of damp stone, candle wax, and the faint whiff of yesterday's barley soup. You pass the herb garden, where Brother Thomas is already tending to the rosemary and lavender, his breath visible in the frosty morning. The chapel is dimly lit with flickering candles, and you join the other monks in chanting psalms, your voice blending with theirs in a low, rhythmic hum. It's a moment of peace before the long day ahead, a day of copying manuscripts in the scriptorium where your real work begins. After morning prayers, you head to the refectory for a simple meal. A bowl of barley porridge and a piece of coarse bread, washed down with watered-down ale. It's not exactly a feast, but it fills your stomach enough to face the day. You make your way to the scriptorium, a small room in the monastery where the monks copy manuscripts. The scriptorium is a quiet, cold space, with stone walls and narrow windows that let in just enough light to see your work. Wooden desks are lined up in rows, each one holding a slanted writing surface, an ink pot, a quill, and a pile of parchment. You settle at your desk, your breath visible in the chilly air. Your task today is to copy a Latin translation of Aristotle's Physics, a book the abbot wants for the monastery library. First, you need to prepare your tools. You pick up a goose feather quill, carefully trimming the tip with a small knife to create a sharp nib. Too sharp, and it'll tear the parchment. Too blunt, and your letters will look like a child scribbles. You mix ink in a small pot, grinding a lump of black pigment with water and a bit of gum arabic to make it stick. You dip your quill, but in your sleepy haze you knock the ink pot over, sending a black puddle across the desk. You mutter a prayer for patience as you mop it up with a rag, hoping the abbot doesn't notice the stain on your sleeve. Next, you prepare the parchment, which is made from sheepskin, stretched, scraped, and dried until it's smooth. It's expensive stuff, and every sheet is precious, so you can't afford to make mistakes. You rule the page with faint lines using a lead stylus, creating a grid to keep your writing neat. The parchment smells faintly of animal hide, and you notice a small tear in the corner, probably from a clumsy novice. You sigh, knowing you'll have to work around it. Finally, you light a small candle for extra light. Its flame flickering in the drafty room. You're ready to start copying, but the real challenge is just beginning. With your tools ready, you begin the slow, painstaking work of copying Aristotle's physics. The original manuscript sits on a stand beside you, its pages worn and faded from years of use. You dip your quill in ink and start writing, carefully forming each letter in a neat, rounded script called Carolingian minuscule, a style designed to be clear and readable. Each stroke of the quill is deliberate, the scratch of the nib against parchment, the only sound in the quiet scriptorium, aside from the occasional cough of another monk or the squeak of a mouse scurrying across the floor. The work is tedious, to say the least. You're copying word for word, line by line, page by page, and there's no room for error. If you make a mistake, you can't just cross it out. Parchment is too precious for that. Instead, you have to scrape the ink off with a knife, which leaves a rough spot that might tear if you're not careful. Your hand cramps after the first hour, and your back aches from hunching over the desk. The candlelight flickers, making your eyes strain, and you have to squint to read the faded text of the original. Every so often, you pause to stretch your fingers, muttering a prayer for patience as a mouse steals a crumb from your desk. You glare at it, but it's too quick for you to catch. The monotony is mind-numbing. You've been copying the same passage for hours, and you're only halfway through the page. Your mind starts to wander. Maybe you should have joined the monks in the herb garden instead. But a sharp reprimand from Brother Anselm, the head scribe, snaps you back to focus. Eadric, stop daydreaming. The abbot wants this done by vespers. You nod, dipping your quill again, and keep going. It's not glamorous work, but it's important. Books are rare and precious in the Middle Ages, and your copies help preserve knowledge for future generations. As the morning drags on, the challenges of scriptorium work become painfully clear. The cold is a constant enemy. The scriptorium is unheated, and your fingers are numb from the chill. You blow on them to keep them warm, but it doesn't help much. The candle you're using for light keeps dripping wax onto the desk, and once a drop lands on your parchment, smudging a letter you just wrote. You groan, scraping it off with your knife, but the spot looks uneven now, and you know Brother Anselm will notice. Sure enough, he glances over from his desk and snaps, "Eadric, if you ruin that page, you'll be saying extra prayers tonight." You mutter an apology, but inside, you're wondering if copying books is worth all this trouble. Then, there's the ink. It's a finicky mixture, and if you don't get the consistency just right, it either clumps on the quill or spreads too thin, making your letters look like spider webs. You've already had to remake the ink twice today because it keeps drying out in the cold air. And don't even get started on the quills. They wear out quickly, and you have to stop every hour to trim a new one. Once, you trim it too sharply and end up tearing the parchment, leaving a small hole in the middle of a sentence. You sigh, knowing you'll have to stitch it up later with a needle and thread, a tedious task that'll take up the rest of your morning. Monastic life? adds its own challenges. Silence is the rule in the scriptorium. No talking, no humming, just the scratch of quills and the occasional cough. It's meant to keep you focused, but it also makes the day feel endless. You're not even allowed to leave for a break unless it's time for prayers or meals. Your stomach grumbles as you think of the midday meal, more bread and a bowl of watery vegetable stew, but that's still hours away. For now, you're stuck at your desk, copying line after line with only the mice for company. Finally, the bell rings for sext, the midday prayer, signaling the break from your work. You set down your quill, stretch your cramped fingers, and join the other monks in the chapel for a brief service. After prayers, you head to the refectory for lunch, a simple meal of barley bread, a bowl of vegetable stew made with turnips and leeks, and a small cup of ale. The stew is lukewarm and a bit bland, but after hours of copying, it tastes like a feast. You sit at a long wooden table, with the other monks eating in silence as one of them reads a passage from the Bible aloud, a monastery rule to keep your mind on holy thoughts. Despite the silence, there's a small moment of chaos when Brother Cuthbert, a clumsy novice, accidentally spills his stew across the table. You stifle a laugh as he scrambles to clean it up, earning a stern look from the abbot. For a moment, you feel a sense of camaraderie with your fellow monks. You're all in this together, fleas and all. After the meal, you're allowed a short walk in the cloister, a covered walkway surrounding the monastery's courtyard. The air is crisp, and the herb garden smells of lavender and rosemary, a welcome change from the musty scriptorium. You stretch your legs, feeling the sun on your face, and for a brief moment, the day doesn't feel so endless. But the break is short-lived. The bell rings again, calling you back to the scriptorium. You sigh, knowing you've got another long stretch of copying ahead. As you return to your desk, you notice the mouse from earlier has stolen another crumb. You're starting to think it's mocking you. You dip your quill in ink and get back to work, the scratch of the nib against parchment filling the quiet room once more. As the afternoon sun filters through the scriptorium's narrow windows, you take a moment to appreciate the importance of your work. Books in the Middle Ages are rare and precious. There's no printing press yet, so every book has to be copied by hand. Monasteries like yours are the guardians of knowledge, preserving ancient texts like Aristotle, the Bible, and the writings of early Christian fathers. Without scribes like you, this knowledge would be lost to time, buried under the chaos of the times. The manuscript you are copying, Aristotle's Physics, is part of the monastery's growing library, a collection that will be used by monks, scholars, and even visiting nobles. But copying isn't just about the words, it's an art form. You're not just writing, you're creating a book that might last for centuries. Every so often, you add a decorative touch, like an illuminated initial, a large, ornate letter at the start of a chapter, painted with red and blue ink and a bit of gold leaf. It's a small moment of creativity in an otherwise monotonous day, and you take pride in making the letter as beautiful as you can, even if your hand shakes from the cold. The process of making a book is a labor of love. The parchment comes from sheepskin, prepared by other monks who spend days scraping and stretching the hides. The ink is made from oak galls and iron salts, a recipe that took years to perfect. The quills are plucked from geese, and the gold leaf comes from a merchant in the nearest town, a rare luxury for the monastery. Each book takes months to complete, and a single mistake can ruin weeks of work. But when it's done, it's a thing of beauty, a window into the past a bridge to the future. You may never see the finished book, but you know your work will live on long after you're gone. By mid-afternoon, the scriptorium feels like a prison. You've been copying for hours, and the monotony is starting to wear you down. Your eyes are tired from squinting at the faded text. Your hand is cramping again, and the cold has settled into your bones. You've lost count of how many times you've written the word philosophia, and you're starting to wonder if Aristotle ever took a break. The silence of the scriptorium is oppressive, broken only by the scratch of quills and the occasional cough from Brother Anselm. You try to stay focused, but distractions keep creeping in. A bird lands on the windowsill, chirping loudly, and you glance up, imagining what it would be like to fly away from this desk. You daydream about the village festival you heard about last week. There'll be music, dancing, maybe even a pie or two. Your stomach grumbles at the thought, and you shake your head, trying to focus. But the candle has burned low, and a puddle of wax has formed on the desk. You must have dozed off for a moment. You jolt upright, hoping Brother Anselm didn't notice, but he's too busy correcting a novice's work to care. The mouse from earlier scurries across the floor again, and you swear it's taunting you now. You toss a crumb at it, but it just grabs the prize and runs off, leaving you to your endless copying. You sigh, dipping your quill in ink, and keep going. The afternoon feels like it'll never end. But you know you have to finish this page before Vespers, the evening prayers, or you'll be stuck here even longer. As the day draws to a close, you finally finish the page you've been working on. It's not perfect. The tear in the parchment made things tricky, and there's a small smudge where your hand slipped, but it's done. You carefully set the page aside to dry, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. You've been working on this manuscript for weeks, and with this page, you're one step closer to completing it. You imagine the finished book on a shelf in the monastery library, where it might be read by scholars, monks, or even a visiting bishop. Scribes like you are the unsung heroes of the Middle Ages, in an era often called the Dark Ages, when wars, plagues, and invasions threaten to erase the knowledge of the past. Monasteries become beacons of learning. The books you copy, texts by Aristotle, Augustine, and the ancient Romans, keep alive the wisdom of antiquity. Without your work, much of this knowledge would be lost forever, buried under the chaos of the times. The manuscripts you create will be passed down for centuries, some even surviving into the modern age, where they'll be studied by historians and marveled at in museums. But your work isn't just about preservation, it's about faith. As a monk, you see copying as a form of prayer, a way to serve God by spreading His word and the wisdom of His creation. Each letter you write is an act of devotion, even if your hand cramps and your eyes ache. You may never leave this monastery, but your manuscripts will travel far beyond its walls, carrying your silent legacy into the future. As the sun sets, the bell rings for Vespers, the evening prayer. You set down your quill, stretch your aching back, and join the other monks in the chapel. The air is warm with the glow of candles, and the familiar chant of psalms fills the space, a soothing rhythm that calms your tired mind. After prayers, you head to the refectory for supper, a simple meal of bread, cheese, and a bowl of lentil soup. The food is plain, but it's filling, and you savor every bite, grateful for the warmth in your belly after a long day. Back in your cell, you light a small candle and kneel for a final prayer, thanking God for the strength to get through another day. You reflect on the pages you copied, the mistakes you made, and the small victories, like the illuminated letter you're particularly proud of. Your hands are stained with ink, your back aches, and your eyes are heavy, but there's a quiet satisfaction in knowing you've done your part to preserve knowledge and serve your faith. You blow out the candle and lie down on your straw mat, the fleas greeting you like old friends. The monastery is silent now, except for the distant hoot of an owl and the faint creak of the wooden roof. As you drift off, the day's work fades into the background, replaced by dreams of parchment, quills, and the endless scratch of writing. Another day as a medieval scribe is done, and you've survived to do it all again tomorrow. And so, a day in the life of a medieval scribe comes to a close, leaving behind a legacy of ink, parchment, and quiet devotion in the heart of a dark age. If you're still awake after this 90-minute journey, I hope you've learned a bit about this ancient craft. If you're drifting off, let the scratch of quills carry you to dreamland. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts or what historical tale you'd like to hear next. Until then, sleep well, and may your dreams be as peaceful as a monk's prayer. Welcome to another soothing journey through history. Tonight, we're stepping into the steamy, bustling world of a Roman bathhouse in the 2nd century AD, a place of relaxation, gossip, and luxury for the citizens of Rome, but a sweaty, exhausting workplace for the unsung workers who keep it running. Imagine spending your day scrubbing floors, hauling wood, and dodging grumpy senators, all while trying not to slip on a wet tile. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll follow a worker named Lucius through his long, tiring day, exploring the culture of Roman bathing and the hidden struggles behind the marble walls. If you're ready to trade your modern comforts for a peek into this ancient routine, settle in, dim the lights, and maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum. Oh, and if you enjoy this journey, give the video a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, let's splash into the past. It's just before dawn in the bustling city of Rome, around 150 AD, and you're a bathhouse worker named Lucius. You live in a cramped tenement apartment, a tiny room in a multi-story building that smells like sweat, smoke, and yesterday's fish stew. Your bed is a straw mat on the floor, and let's just say the fleas have decided you're their best friend. No alarm clocks here, just the distant crow of a rooster, and the shouts of early risers in the street below. You roll over, groaning, because you know what's coming. Another long day at the Thermae, one of the grand public bathhouses of Rome. You stumble out of bed, your bare feet hitting the cold dirt floor, because floors and tenements aren't exactly fancy. The air is chilly, and you shiver as you splash your face with water from a clay jug, hoping it's not too full of whatever the upstairs neighbors tossed out their window last night. Breakfast is a simple affair, a stale chunk of bread and a few olives, which you eat while shooing away a rat that's eyeing your meal like it's a 5-star feast. You pull on your tunic, a rough linen thing that's seen better days, and a pair of worn sandals. You're not winning any fashion awards, but at least you're not barefoot in a city where the streets are a mix of mud, horse dung, and mystery liquids. As you step outside, the city is already waking up. Bakers are shouting about their fresh bread, merchants are hauling carts to the market, and a group of kids runs by chasing a stray dog. You weave through the narrow, crowded streets toward the bathhouse, a massive building with marble columns and steam rising from its roof. It's the Baths of Trajan, a sprawling complex that can hold thousands of bathers at once, a place of relaxation for the wealthy, but for you, it's just another day of scrubbing, hauling, and sweating. You arrive at the bathhouse just as the first rays of sunlight hit the marble columns. The Thermae is already buzzing with activity. Other workers are rushing around, and the head overseer, a grumpy man named Gaius, is barking orders like he's commanding an army. Your first task of the day is to keep the fires burning in the hypocaust system, the underfloor heating that makes the bathhouse so luxurious. Underneath the floors are a maze of tunnels where fires heat the air, warming the rooms above and the water in the pools. It's a genius system, but it's also a sweaty, smoky nightmare to maintain. You head down to the furnace room, a dark, hot space that smells like charcoal and sweat. The air is thick with smoke, and you can barely see through the haze. Chimneys aren't exactly a thing yet, so the smoke just lingers like an unwanted guest. You grab a bundle of wood from the pile, your arms aching already, and toss it into the roaring fire. The flames leap up, and you shield your face from the heat, wondering if you'll ever get used to feeling like a roast pig. Another worker, a skinny teenager named Titus, drops a log on his foot and hops around, cursing in a way that would make a sailor blush. You can't help but chuckle. Misery loves company after all. Keeping the fires going is a never-ending task. The bathhouse has to stay warm all day, from the frigidarium, the cold room, to the caldarium, the hot room. And if the fires die down, the bathers will complain, loudly. You spend hours hauling wood, stoking the flames, and sweeping ash, all while trying not to pass out from the heat. Gaius pokes his head in every so often, shouting, "Faster, Lucius, the senators are coming at noon. And they'll have my head, if the water's not scalding." You mutter under your breath that he's welcome to stoke the fires himself, but you keep working. After all, you need this job. Your wages, a few bronze coins a day, are just enough to keep you fed and housed. By mid-morning, the fires are roaring, and the bathhouse is ready for its first wave of visitors, but before the doors open, you've got another job, cleaning. The bathhouse is a marvel of engineering, marble floors, mosaic walls, and steaming pools, but it's also a mess. Last night's bathers left behind a trail of oil, food scraps, and who knows what else. You grab a wooden bucket and a stiff brush, muttering to yourself that this is the least glamorous job in Rome. You start in the caldarium, the hottest room, where the steam is so thick you can barely see your own hands. The floor is slick with olive oil. Romans use it to clean themselves, scraping it off with a curved tool called a strigil. But they're not exactly tidy about it. You scrub the tiles, your knees aching, while sweat drips down your face. Just as you're making progress, a wealthy Roman named Senator Flavius bursts in, wrapped in a toga, and immediately slips on the wet floor, dropping his oil flask with a crash. He glares at you like it's your fault, and you mumble an apology while trying not to laugh. Senators. They expect the world to revolve around them, even when they're sprawled on the floor. Next, you move to the frigidarium, the cold pool room, which is a relief after the heat of the caldarium. But the water is murky, full of floating leaves and bits of bread. Someone must have snuck in a snack last night. You scoop out the debris with a net, shivering as the cold water splashes your arms. Gaius yells from the doorway, "Hurry up, Lucius, the bathers are arriving." You sigh, wondering if Gaius has ever scrubbed a floor in his life. Cleaning isn't just about looks. It's about keeping the bathhouse running. If the pools get too dirty, diseases like dysentery can spread, and nobody wants to be known as the bathhouse that gave half the city a stomachache. By noon, the bathhouse is packed. Merchants, soldiers, senators, and even a few wealthy women fill the rooms, their voices echoing off the marble walls. The bathhouse isn't just a place to get clean. It's the social hub of Rome. People come to relax, gossip, and make deals, all while soaking in the warm water or sweating in the steam rooms. For you, though, it's the busiest part of the day. Your job now is to serve the bathers, running back and forth with trays of olive oil, strigils, and jugs of water. Senator Flavius, still grumpy from this fall, demands hotter water in the caldarium. So, you rush to tell the furnace workers to stoke the fires even more. A merchant named Marcus wants a massage. But the masseur is busy, so you have to fetch more oil from the storage room, dodging bathers who are slipping on the wet floors like it's an Olympic sport. You hear snippets of gossip as you move through the rooms. "Did you hear Senator Flavius lost a fortune betting on the chariot races?" one woman whispers. "I heard he's bribing the governor to get it back," her friend replies. You smirk to yourself. Bathhouses are better than taverns for the juiciest rumors. But serving bathers isn't all fun and gossip. Some of them treat you like you're invisible, tossing their dirty towels at you, without a word. Others are outright rude, like the young patrician who snaps his fingers and calls you boy, even though you're probably older than him. You grit your teeth and keep going, because a single complaint to Gaius could cost you your job. By the time the afternoon rolls around, your tunic is soaked with sweat and water, your feet ache, and you're dreaming of a quiet moment to eat your lunch, a dry piece of bread and some watered-down wine. As the day stretches into late afternoon, you take a rare moment to catch your breath and watch the bathers. Bathhouses, like the baths of Trajan, aren't just about getting clean. They're the heart of Roman social life. For a few bronze coins, anyone can enter, from wealthy senators to humble shopkeepers. It's one of the few places where social classes mix, though the rich still get the best spots in the caldarium. The bathing process is a ritual. First, bathers head to the appetitarium, the changing room, to strip off their clothes and leave them on stone benches. You've seen more than one bather forget where they parked their toga, wandering around in a towel, looking confused. Then they move to the tepidarium, the warm room, to ease into the heat before diving into the caldarium for a hot soak. They rub olive oil on their skin, then scrape it off with a strigil, leaving behind dirt, sweat, and oil, which you'll have to clean up later. Finally, they cool off in the frigidarium, splashing in the cold pool and chatting about politics, gladiator fights, or the latest scandal. Bathhouses are also a place for leisure. Some bathers play dice or board games. Others read scrolls. Yes, Romans bring books to the bath, because why not? Wealthy patrons might get a massage or a haircut right there in the bathhouse, while others just gossip about who's sleeping with whom. It's like a modern gym, spa, and coffee shop all rolled into one, but with more nudity and fewer cappuccinos. For you, though, it's just another reminder of how much work goes into keeping this place running. The bathhouse is a marvel of engineering. Aqueducts bring in fresh water. The hypocaust system keeps everything warm, but it's your sweat that makes it all possible. As you take a break to eat your lunch, a dry piece of bread, and watered-down wine, you can't help but marvel at the engineering behind the bathhouse. The baths of Trajan are a testament to Roman ingenuity, a sprawling complex that's as much a feat of technology as it is a place of relaxation. Let's take a step back and look at how this all works, because it's pretty impressive, even if it means more work for you. The first challenge is water. Rome's bathhouses use millions of liters a day, and that water comes from aqueducts, massive stone channels that stretch for miles, bringing fresh water from springs in the hills to the city. The aqueducts are engineering marvels, sloping just enough to keep the water flowing without pumps. At the bathhouse, the water is channeled into cisterns, then distributed to the pools through a network of lead pipes. You've heard stories of workers getting sick from the lead, but nobody seems to care, as long as the water keeps flowing. Then there's the hypocaust system, the underfloor heating that keeps the bathhouse warm. Fires burn beneath the floors, heating the air in a maze of tunnels, which in turn heats the rooms above. The floors are raised on small pillars, called pilae, to create space for the hot air to circulate. It's a brilliant system, but it's also a pain to maintain. You've spent half your day hauling wood to keep those fires going. And the smoke is so thick, you're starting to think you might be part chimney by now. The hot water for the pools is heated in massive bronze boilers, fueled by the same fires, and piped into the caldarium for bathers to enjoy. The bathhouse is a marvel, but it's also a reminder of the divide between you and the bathers. They get to enjoy the luxury of hot water and warm floors, while you're stuck in the smoky underbelly, making sure it all works. Still, there's a small sense of pride in knowing you're part of something so grand, even if you'd rather be soaking in the pools than cleaning them. As the afternoon turns into evening, the bathhouse becomes a hotbed of politics and intrigue. The thermae isn't just a place to bathe. It's where deals are made, alliances are formed, and secrets are whispered over the sound of splashing water. You've learned to keep your ears open while you work, because the bathhouse gossip is often more valuable than your wages. In the tipidarium you spot two senators, Flavius and his rival Senator Decimus, sitting close together, their voices low. They're wrapped in togas, but their faces are tense as they whisper about a plot to undermine the governor. If we bribe the right people, he'll be out by next month, Flavius mutters, glancing around to make sure no one's listening. Decimus nods, adding, and we'll make sure our man takes his place. You pretend not to hear as you carry a jug of water past them, but you can't help smirking. Politics in Rome is dirtier than the frigidarium pool after a busy day. The bathhouse is a perfect place for scheming. It's one of the few places where senators, merchants, and even soldiers can meet without drawing suspicion. The steam and noise provide a natural cover for whispered conversations, and the relaxed atmosphere makes people let their guard down. You've heard all sorts of secrets over the years, bribes, affairs, even whispers of rebellion against the emperor. Not that you'd ever tell anyone. Gaius would have your head if you got caught spreading rumors. But it's hard not to listen when the stakes are so high. Sometimes the intrigue spills over into your work. A centurion might demand you fetch him a strigil faster so he can overhear a rival's conversation. Or a merchant might slip you a coin to, accidentally, spill water on someone he doesn't like. You've learned to navigate these situations carefully. After all, you're just a worker, and getting caught in the middle of a political plot could land you in serious trouble. For now, you keep your head down and your ears open, wondering what other secrets the bathhouse will reveal before the day is done. As the sun begins to set, the bathhouse enters its busiest time, the evening rush. This is when the workers who've been toiling all day come to unwind, along with a rowdier crowd looking to drink and socialize. The air is thick with steam and the smell of wine, and the noise level is deafening. Laughter, shouting, and a splash of water echo off the marble walls. You're running on fumes now, but there's no time to rest. A group of drunken merchants has taken over the caldarium, singing off-key and spilling wine everywhere. You rush over with a tray of towels, trying to clean up the mess before Gaius notices, but one of them grabs your arm and slurs, "More wine, boy, and make it quick." You politely explain that you're not a waiter, but he's too drunk to care, so you fetch a jug of wine just to keep the peace. As you turn to leave, another bather, a soldier fresh from the frontier, accidentally knocks the jug out of your hands and it shatters on the floor. The merchants laugh, but Gaius glares at you from across the room, and you know you'll be paying for that jug out of your wages. The evening rush brings other challenges too. A pipe in the frigidarium springs a leak, flooding the floor, and you have to wade through cold water to fix it, all while bathers complain that their feet are getting wet. A fight breaks out in the tepidarium between two men arguing over a dice game, and you have to call the guards to break it up before they start throwing strigils. By the time the crowd starts to thin out, you're soaked, exhausted, and ready to collapse. But there's a small sense of satisfaction in surviving the chaos. Another day at the bathhouse, and you're still standing. By late evening, the bathhouse finally empties out. The last bathers leave, wrapped in their togas, their voices fading as they head to the taverns for a late dinner. You're exhausted, your arms ache from hauling wood, your knees are sore from scrubbing, and your tunic is a damp mess. But there's a deep sense of relief as the chaos of the day gives way to quiet. You do a final sweep of the bathhouse, picking up stray sandals and wiping down the benches. Gaius counts the day's earnings, muttering to himself about how Senator Flavius tipped less than usual. He tosses you a few bronze coins, your wages for the day, and grumbles, "Good work, Lucius, don't be late tomorrow." You nod, too tired to reply, and head out into the cool evening air. The streets of Rome are quieter now, lit by flickering torches, and the smell of fresh bread wafts from a nearby bakery. You stop to buy a loaf with your earnings, savoring the warm crust as you walk home. Back in your tiny tenement room, you collapse onto your straw mat, the fleas greeting you like old friends. You're too tired to care. As you drift off, the sounds of the city, distant laughter, a barking dog, the clatter of a cart, fade into the background. You reflect on the day, the back-breaking work, the endless demands, the snippets of gossip that remind you Rome is a city of power and secrets. The bathhouse is a place of luxury for some, but for you, it's a place of survival. Still, there's a strange pride in knowing you helped keep this grand machine running, even if you'll never soak in its waters yourself. Another day at the bathhouse is done, and you've survived to do it all again tomorrow. And so, a day in the life of a Roman bathhouse worker comes to a close, leaving behind a legacy of sweat, steam, and survival in the heart of ancient Rome. If you're still awake after this 90-minute journey, I hope you've learned a bit about this ancient routine. If you're drifting off, let the warm waters of the Thermae carry you to dreamland. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts or what historical tale you'd like to hear next. Until then, sleep well, and may your dreams be as steamy as a Roman bathhouse.